Hey, Saretsky here. As always, Canadian real estate market update with a particular focus on Vancouver. If you're getting sort of value or entertainment out of these videos, I'll ask you to hit thumbs up and subscribe. Questions, comments, put those below. Good to be back home, back in the saddle. I highly encourage you, a little bit of housekeeping, to go check out my interview that just dropped with the couple legends in the space, Jeff Booth and Greg Foss. I really did like a macro overview, macro mastermind. And tying, Bitcoin, how that may or may not play into the macro framework moving forward. But of course, Jeff Booth wrote the book Price of Tomorrow, good local Vancouver boy, and Greg Foss, another Canadian boy that spent 32 years trading high yield credit. Really just, again, providing a larger overview of the macro framework, because that's really what this, channel that we're building here is all about, is just financial education, particularly as it pertains to Canadians. And there's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, we know we've got the Loonie Hour that we've been working on. Those episodes drop every Friday. That one of the things that I'm looking at, for example, is just all the policies that are happening in the space and how they influence everyone's day-to-day lives. I mean, every single decision that, whether that be the central banks or whether that be, various levels of government, every decision that they make influences your day-to-day life, and particularly, your finances. And so, one of the charts I always show is like, we talked today about inflation, CPI inflation, wage growth, all this stuff, and how that's measured and whatnot. I mean, one of these charts here, I just had my boy Rich Diaz put this one together for me. Showing here, like, if we look at over the years, Canada's housing money M2 money supply growth, since the year 2000 has grown by over 450%. And then you've got the Terranet National Home Price Index in Canada, which has grown over 400%. And then, of course, you've got like the CPI inflation index, which is up, 160%. So it really kind of goes to show you that, if your wages are going up with, say, CPI inflation, which is typically, let's say, 2% a year per the official metric, you haven't been able to keep up with the pace of home price appreciation, and you've ultimately been falling further behind. So your purchasing power has been essentially debased. And if you unpack that CPI inflation, because people will say, well, housing isn't necessarily CPI, and I get it, that's true. Housing inflation on that chart would have actually been 60%. So despite home prices rising north of 400% since the year 2000, per Stats Canada, CPI housing shelter is up just over 60%. So clearly, the way that they're measuring that index is not reflective of the reality, and these are just things to pay attention to, right? I mean, like, if we're looking at the news, this week, really fascinating thing. I don't know if I might have touched on it in last week's video, but we got the numbers in 2021. Canada brought in 410,000 new immigrants, right? 410,000 people, basically kind of hitting the government's targets, right? The U.S., which is a country that is basically almost 10 times the size, right? The country's 10 times larger than Canada. They brought in 500,000 people. So Canada has this massive immigration program, which, again, right or wrong, it is what it is. We're a nation, we're a country that's built on immigration, and I have no issues with immigration. But you have to understand that is a policy decision that the federal government has made. They have gone out and made that decision to hit that particular target. And that's great, but you have to think, okay, well, what that does basically is it increases, by importing more people and having more, people in the country producing things, right? So what they've chosen ultimately is to increase nominal GDP. Again, keep in mind, not real GDP, but nominal GDP. They've decided to increase nominal GDP while also increasing tax revenues, right? More people coming in, more people earning income, more people paying taxes, contributing to Canada Pension Plan, etc., supporting government, expenses. So you've increased nominal GDP and you've increased the tax revenue base at the expense, ultimately, again, at the expense of housing affordability. So why housing affordability? Well, listen, if you already have a housing shortage, importing 400,000 more people, when the ability to ramp up supply cannot quickly be done, you are sacrificing housing affordability at that expense. And again, if you want to elaborate a little bit further on that, if we look at wage growth in the U.S. versus in Canada, in the U.S. they're actually experiencing quite a lot stronger wage growth. So in Canada, we just had the most recent number. Wage growth in Canada is running at 2.7%. Again, with inflation right now hovering around 5%, I mean it's a loss in real terms. I mean, people, despite your 2.7% wage increase, you're not getting any wealthier. Particularly when we know that real assets, again, such as hard assets such as housing, are going up even higher than 5%. And so what happens is that when you bring in more immigration, again, right or wrong, it is helping fill jobs, which is great, but it's at the expense of wages, of the cost of labor, right? You're bringing in, basically, if you add more labor to the economy, if you add more supply of labor, that it helps put a cap on wage growth. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if there's a shortage of workers, to incentivize them to get off the sidelines, if you start raising wages significantly higher, you're not only going to get significantly higher, obviously, wage growth, but so these are the decisions that policymakers have to make. So I think that's important to contextualize, because we're dealing with the situation right now. If we look at the GTA in Toronto, you've got 3,900 active listings for sale as of the end of December. This is an all-time record low. So you're going into the new year here in 2022 with record low inventory, 0.5 months of inventory. I mean, that is so beyond unhealthy. I mean, you can't have a housing market with 0.5 months of inventory. That is a crisis, and that's why you've got rampant house price inflation. You go to you see all these wild stories in the GTA with suburban houses doubling over the last 2 years. I mean, that's what happens when you have less than a month's worth of housing supply on the market. I just finished up writing my Saretsky report for the Vancouver housing market here, which, again, if you want access to that, you can go on my website, stevesaretsky.com. That will be released in the next couple days. You can sign up there for free. But we look at the same thing. I mean, here's the Greater Vancouver housing market, all-time record sales in 2021. And we're sitting at a situation right now where we've got just under 5,000 active listings for sale, which again is an all-time record low. You've never had this acute of a housing shortage. Now again, people will say, okay, well it's because of investors. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, those investors aren't going away. I mean, they go away, sure, if you raise rates 300 basis points, okay, sure, they're going to go away. But at the end of the day, we're at a point now, this is a crisis level of housing inventory currently available for sale, and that is going to put, again, upwards pressure on house prices. I mean, the things that we're seeing on the ground, things that I'm seeing early days, we're very early into 2022, but the things that I'm seeing for suburban detached houses right now is quite, honestly, it's off the charts. It's unbelievable. I mean, the prices that we're seeing, in my opinion, are extremely concerning. The rampant price growth. If we look at the Fraser Valley, this is the home price index, right? So, I mean, there's crazier stories, but the home price index in the Fraser Valley for a detached house is up 39% in 12 months. I mean, if that's not a crisis, I don't know what is. And so again, comes down to, some of these are, again, policy decisions that need to be made, and housing supply can't react fast enough to really what's going on. And so, anyways, we're gonna wait and see. We're gonna see how this unfolds. Like I said, I think that the only break that Canadians can hope for on the housing market, like the lever, the break, really is financial conditions, the cost of money. I think that we're probably going to see an accelerated pace of rate hikes coming out of the U.S. Federal Reserve, and the Bank of Canada will be forced to follow suit. If the Fed starts hiking rates, which they say they're going to anyways, the Bank of Canada will have to follow. My view hasn't really changed. I think they're going to follow. I think that they're likely going to get stomped out quicker than anyone really anticipates, just because we have so much debt in the system that they will probably break something before they get too far. Again, I think I think the thing that I'm looking for here right now is this 2018 2.0, where, if anyone remembers, Jay Powell took over at the Fed, got extremely hawkish, says, you know what, I'm going to keep raising rates. We've got to get them up. We've got to get them off the floor. I'm going to keep going basically until something breaks. And he broke something in December of 2018. Stock market fell 20%. He immediately reversed course, fired up the printing presses, dropped rates to zero, and markets took off from there. So I think my guess right now is I think we're going down a similar path. I think central banks are probably going to break something, and that's an end of 2022 story, because 2-3 rate hikes, you're probably okay. But I think as you start ramping up above that, we'll wait and see. So I think that's the break that Canadians I think are probably going to have to hope for to slow down 40% price growth in some of these markets that we're seeing. So as always, I hope that helped. Again, really looking forward to a lot of the content that we're producing with the Loonie Hour. We've got a lot of big things coming up, I think, hopefully with Ice Cap, and we're bringing on some more guests. I think we're going to have a really good lineup here. So again, appreciate the community that you're helping us build. Hopefully this is helping you create a framework to, again, my ultimate goal is just to shine a light on this, to shine a light on the policies, to ultimately help everyone here to protect their hard-earned capital, whatever way that you see fit. Again, it doesn't have to be put it into housing. That could be whatever you see fit. Hey, you like, oil and gas stocks in Canada because they're paying 5% dividends? Great, go for it. So that's all I got for this week. See you next week.